Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fathering with Compassion with the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County and Coaching Boys into Men. My name is Joe Henson. I'm the coordinator of Coaching Boys into Men, and I'm also your moderator for today's panel. Personally, I have 11 years of experience with the military, as long as decades of playing sports myself and mentoring youth. With that being said, throughout the event, if you can think of any excellent male role models, we ask you to drop them in the comments so that we may be able to discuss them later. And if you have any questions or comments that you'd like addressed, feel free to put those in the comments as well, and we'll do our best to address those. Now, with that being said, I would like to introduce you to our first panelist, Lieutenant Roger Alice with the Coatesville Police Department. He's a father of four. He and I actually worked as panelists for another event called A Call to Men. He's also a member of the advisory board of the Coatesville Youth Initiative, member of the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County's board, and a member of the Coaching Boys into Men board. So thank you for being here, Roger. Let me also introduce our other panelist, Dr. Chris Lenardi. Dr. Lenardi has over 20 years experience in education. He's a teacher, a coach, athletic director, and the assistant principal at Baird Rustin High School here in Chester County. He's also a father of five, and in 2019, he won the Excellence in Male Leadership Award. So thank you, Chris. I'm glad to have both of you here, and I appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
All right. Well, if you guys are ready, let's get rolling into the questions here.
We're rolling.
Okay, so the first question, what do you think the biggest struggle boys face today is? I'm just going to say a little bit about what I think. And one of the biggest things that I think young men are facing is the struggle and the discussion around healthy masculinity. What is it? What is it not? And sort of a lot of the adverse reactions we have to the term, because people hear it and they're like, well, what's so unhealthy? What is healthy? You know, I did X, Y, and Z. How is that unhealthy? So in my opinion, for a lot of young men out there, navigating that is a huge issue. But I'm going to kick it over to Chris here, and let me know what you think, Chris.
Yeah, Joe, I think everything you just brought up has been a challenge for young men, young boys growing into men forever. I think what currently is really complicating that is really this thing right here, which almost all of our young men have in their hand, and which provides them with hundreds, if not thousands, of messages per day about any and every issue around masculinity, around growing up into a young adult. And so, whereas in the past, listen, there's no making adolescence easy or smooth. It's a bumpy ride, as any former adolescent or parent will tell you. It's a bumpy ride.
Yeah.
But in the past, for the most part, young adults could look to parents, teachers, coaches, other leaders in their community to role model for them. Now, again, as I mentioned, they're being just drowned with all kinds of messaging, a lot of which is not positive and a lot of which is toxic. And trying to navigate that as a young adolescent is, I think, particularly challenging in the year 2021.
That's actually a great, outstanding point there, Chris. I know myself and my advisor, when we go to the schools, either running my program or just general domestic violence prevention programs, one of the biggest red flags we end up discussing is technology and the use of it, both positive and negative. So I just think that's really important point to drive home, is the issues around that. So I appreciate that. And now I'm going to bump it over to Roger, see what Lieutenant Alice has for us.
Well, I couldn't agree more with what Chris has mentioned. And gosh, I echo that 100%. I think kids, and it's not new, it's going on for decades and maybe centuries, they're trying to figure out where they fit in. How do they fit into this world with so many influences, both negative and positive. And I would submit to folks that there are far more negative influences nowadays than there were in previous times. I learned how to be a dad from my father's failures and successes. There are a lot of things that my father taught me that are positive that I carry with me to this day. But the compassion part was more my mother. So I got my father's work ethic and his resilience, and my mother's caring heart, and I got a nice mix. Certainly, I've made my mistakes, but the struggles can be just, how do I fit into this complex world now with so many gadgets and so many electronics, and less time outside on the playing field, I think, because you learn great lessons on the playing field, how to socially interact, how to be a good winner and a good loser as well. So we're actually having family day here. We have an officer, if you hear in the background, their kids are out testing our sirens and lights in the patrol car, which is, a pretty cool thing, but tough when you're live on on a chat, right? But I think we'll go to the next question. I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Oh, no problem. Before we move on to the next question, I think you actually brought up something great that I just want to sort of repeat and underline for the audience. And that is, you'd mentioned learning compassion. And we often discourage young men from utilizing compassion and love and things like that, or at least viewing compassion and love in a completely different way. You said you learned it, from your mother, because so often compassion is regarded as a feminine trait. You need to be ruthless and brutal and, the strongest, toughest, baddest dude. And it's like, compassion is something that anyone can have, and it's completely masculine, or it can be wielded in a masculine manner. And yet we've told so many people that it is a feminine trait. So as these young men are trying to navigate where they fit in this world, because I remember from middle school until maybe my first year of college, all I was trying to do was figure out who I was and navigate that. And so knowing that we can look to these individuals, be it women, men, whomever, but introduce a little compassion into our lives, I think it would certainly help these young guys navigate where they're going when they embrace that.
Yeah, without a doubt, compassion and empathy, and I try to teach my kids. It's not an original thought. My sister did this for my mother many years ago, and she sent my mother flowers on her birthday. Not my mother's birthday, my sister's birthday, and she just said, "Thank you for this day. I love you." And man, that was like my aha moment. Like, I want to do that too. Yeah, and now I have our children provide and share flowers with my wife on the children's birthday, just to teach them to look beyond themselves and to show a sense of care and appreciation, and I think that's great. And I felt like really cool as a dad. I'm driving, we're going down the shore, and I think it was Kyle's birthday, and Kyle was then about 8. And so he was able to write, and he was passing a note up to me. It was his birthday, and I'm driving. I'm like, Kyle, I'm trying to drive. And he's like, Dad, you need this. And I opened up this note with my wife next to me. I'm looking at it. It says, "Don't forget, we have to get Mom flowers." I was like, wow, I did something right.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Let's roll on to the next question. So how do you view your role as leaders for young men in Chester County, and what do you think you do best? I mean, obviously you got, decades of leadership between both of you. Let's kick it off with Chris. I'll let you go first.
Sure. I mean, Joe, I've been lucky to just have worked in the school system for 20 years. So when I come to work, I get to do this. I don't have to go out and do it after work. I get to do it at work. And a lot of times that leadership just looks like a conversation with an individual or a small group in the hallway. It doesn't often become anything fancy or planned. Just conversations and even just the way, hopefully I role model for them how to interact with others, whether it be students or staff. So I'm fortunate that I get to do that for a living. I feel really fortunate to have, been doing this work for 20 years. I think what I do best is just be real. I keep it real with kids and adults, and that hopefully exemplifies all those things you talked about: compassion, empathy. We didn't touch on vulnerability, but that's another characteristic that we often intentionally or otherwise shine a negative light on for young men, vulnerability. But I think those things, if I can just overtly discuss them with kids or model them for kids, is what I think I'm pretty decent at doing. I'm not big on speeches or fancy programs. I'm pretty quiet and just try to go about my day and lead by example, but also be mindful of opportunities for one-on-one or small group conversations where we can talk about these issues, because the reality is that, as we mentioned earlier, the kids are bombarded with negative images and negative messaging on a minute by minute basis when they're looking at those screens. And so if left to just that, if all that's coming in to your system is negative, that's what's going to come out. What goes in comes out. And so try to just be a positive role model and encourage kids and be positive with kids and talk to them about the aspects of healthy masculinity, often without talking about it. You don't call a kid into your office and say, hey, we're going to talk about healthy masculinity today. They'd be running as fast as, running the 40-yard dash out of your office. So it needs to be natural but also real. So that's what I try to do and have been fortunate to have the opportunity to do for a long time.
I appreciate that. I was going to say, I know myself and Amelia, my supervisor, both Henderson students back in the day when you were around. So, you've been at it a very long time, and we appreciate that. You had mentioned vulnerability, and I think that's really important to be aware of as well, because to a certain degree, it's a terrifying feeling. To be vulnerable, to open yourself up, to know that I just put something out there that could either proverbially smack me upside the head and make me feel bad, or it could be cathartic and I could work some stuff out. And that fear, that hesitancy to open yourself up and become vulnerable is one of the issues that we see time and time again, because problems that could have been worked out had someone opened up remain inside, deep and repressed. So I really appreciate those points that you made there. Actually, I muted myself. Lieutenant Hollis, same question for you. How do you view yourself as a role model, and what do you think you do best?
Wow, I've been doing law enforcement here in Coatesville about 12 years, and then before that, 12 years elsewhere. And there's really no shortage of opportunities to have an impact and kind of lead by example, not really talk about it, just do it, and hope that some of it is absorbed by those that are witnessing it. I think the best judge of character is what someone's doing when they don't know someone's watching, right? And here where I work, unfortunately, there are too many households that don't have a strong role model available to them. And I'm not saying every house, I'm just saying too many. And so that's where we kind of step in as leaders. I coach in the area, I volunteer in the area, I work in the area, I shop in the area. I spend as much time as I can. I am 19320. I'm Coatesville. Not to offend any of you Westchester folks, but I bleed black and red, and people see me as a role model or a leader, whether I like it or not. I may not have signed up for it, but I am. So I have to conduct myself in a certain way. So if I'm coaching and there's what I'll call unhealthy masculinity on the field and a little fight breaks out, we're gonna break that up, and we're gonna talk about it and talk about why we don't act a certain way, or why we do settle differences with appropriate decorum or sportsmanship. in terms of what I'm good at, gosh, I don't know. I think I'm involved in so many things that I'm not great at anything. But the one thing I really try to project is that being a police officer is what I do. It's not what I am. And what I am is hopefully making me more effective in my field. But I'm a dad, I'm a son, I'm a father, a coach, a volunteer, all those things. And part of the messaging is that the shield that I wear really means nothing unless there's a heart behind it. And that heart is filled with empathy and compassion and care for others. And I usually do that with a smile on my face. And if you judge success not by dollar signs, but by fulfillment and happiness, and that's what people want, well, that's what they'll see with me. And I try to be genuine. And like Chris said, try to be real, because that's what they want. People don't care how much you know. They want to know that you care. A great lesson I learned from my wife.
Before I move to the next question, two things I just want to bring up based off what you said. And one was, you'd mentioned doing the right thing even when no one's looking. In the Army, we called that, integrity. It was, we had a whole, duty, honor, integrity, loyalty, self-service, sacrifice, a whole bunch of sort of key phrases. But for us, that was integrity. It was, you do the right thing no matter what. And for us, it had a lot of different purposes. One, it was because if you're not doing the right thing, it's the Army. Somebody could end up, hurt, dead, whatever. But also because it makes you just a better, more well-rounded individual. And so I like that you mentioned that, because that's something that I've always believed in, was doing the right thing even when no one's looking, because you're not doing the right thing for you. You're doing the right thing because it's the right thing. I felt like there was a second point that I was going to bring up, but it kind of escapes me at the moment. Maybe we'll circle back if I remember it, but for now, let's just move on to the next question, keep things rolling. So that would be, what advice would you give fathers or role models who would start better conversations with their kids? As for the past few questions, I'm going to kick it over to Chris to start off.
Yeah. Joe, I think a lot of times the thing I would say to anyone in this role is you just need to have the conversation. If you're waiting for yourself to feel perfect or think that people view you as perfect or great at whatever it is, teacher, coach, dad, husband, brother, son, you're never going to have that conversation. You just need to have it. I'm not a perfect dad. I'm not a perfect teacher. I don't have all the answers. But I'm still going to try to have those conversations with the athlete, the student, or my own children. We can't wait around until we feel like we have it all together to go ahead and try to be a role model or lead someone else. Now, certainly if our actions in the moment or our current habits are not in line with what we're trying to teach, that message is going to fall on deaf ears. If I'm talking about empathy and compassion, but I'm not displaying that to my wife, and my children see that, then my verbal messaging about empathy and compassion are meaningless. So certainly if there are current actions and behaviors that are preventing you from being that role model, you need to address that first. But that doesn't mean I'm perfect. Doesn't mean I don't get angry. It doesn't mean I don't make mistakes or haven't made lots in the past. But I would say to anyone, to a father or a role model, don't let your own, this is a tough ask, but don't let your own insecurities keep you from role modeling or leading others, because we all have them. We all have insecurities. We all have things ourselves for, either current or past issues. And that's a big challenge. It's a big ask to ask a dad or a coach or a teacher to mentor or lead in a particular area where they don't feel very confident themselves. And that's why, some folks right now, right here, might not be the time and place for them to be trying to lead a role model. But I would say in general, don't let your own insecurities keep you from starting the conversation with the young men in your life.
I like that. And there was something you said that spurred a thought in my mind. I don't remember it yet, but I do have something to say after we ask Lieutenant Hollis. So if I remember, I'll circle back. If not, I have something I wanted to add to this particular part of the conversation anyway. So Lieutenant Hollis, let's hear your thoughts.
Well, in terms of starting a conversation, it can be hard. And I could tell you this, I'm a father of 4. I think I'm better at it now than I was 24 years ago. And that comes through experience. It comes through maturity and becoming wise. Because I messed some things up. I recall getting angry over things that I don't get angry over now. And someone once said to me, use the 5 and 5 rule. And I was like, what is that? And he said, if it doesn't matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes being angry about it. It made some sense. But you got to have those conversations. And I think the dinner table is a good spot. Too many families don't eat together anymore. There's, one's at soccer, one's at drama, or one's working late, the other. So you got to make that time, though. And then you ask those open-ended questions instead of saying, did you have a nice day? And they said yes or no. Usually they say yes if they don't want to get into it because you're just pleased with that answer. But ask what was the best part of your day. What made you smile today? What made you upset? And have that extended conversation instead of one-word answers. And then you can peel back the layers of the onion and really get to what's driving them, what's making your kids tick, so you can support them in some way.
Okay, before we move on to the next question here, I said I had a few things I wanted to add to this part. Now, personally, I'm not a father, but I have been a mentor. When I was in the military, I trained new soldiers, and then when I moved into a mortar section, I was a staff sergeant, and I helped, lead these young men, help them develop their careers and develop their person. But I've also been put into a sort of interesting situation on my own. I help raise my niece. Unfortunately, both her parents had passed. And so I too find myself having to have these conversations. And sometimes, even though I do this work on the daily, not always knowing how to go about it. And so my advice for anyone, you guys brought up some great points, sort of walking the walk. I believe Chris had mentioned, if I'm talking about respect, but disrespecting, your children's mother, they're going to pick up that you're, full of malarkey. So yes, walking the walk is very important. But one thing that I've noticed is to avoid sort of forced or contrived conversations and scenarios, and let it be more organic. Like we're sitting here, we're using the terms toxic masculinity and things like that. But one issue that, I often see in some of the guys that I come up and talk to is a lot of these words just put them all on edge. But if you just start directly speaking about actions, we can use, because terms like toxic masculinity and whatnot are very academic terms that we use to discuss these behaviors within this industry and things like that. But just sitting down and breaking them down in a non-contrived, purely sort of organic way that just arises from the moments and opportunities you have, rather than sitting down and trying to structure the entire talk. It's kind of like what we're doing now. We have an outline of what we're talking about. We have some questions, but you guys are answering honestly and from your own hearts. And so I think that's the best way to go about these sort of talks, at least in my own experience. Because like I said, not a parent, but I'm a role model to my niece, and was a role model to all the men that I served with. So I just wanted to add that little bit from my own experience for everyone. So next up, what is one aspect of unhealthy masculinity or expectations of men that you've experienced, and how did you grow beyond that? We'll do same order. Chris, let us know what you think.
Yeah, I think I kind of had a very stereotypical high school and college athletic and academic existence. Went to high school, went to college, played sports, was in the fraternity, the whole deal, to where, literally a caricature of just being taught that, you're aggressive on the field, you're physical on the field. Same thing on Saturday night at the frat house. And so just, living that, and then, I think we're all still a work in progress, but learning how to recognize what's unhealthy there and move past it. Again, very stereotypical experience there, but one that, a lot of people can get drawn into and learn some bad habits and behaviors for having, lived that. And so I definitely did that. I think, now that I'm old and gray, I kind of can see how I've learned from that. And now I feel like, I need to turn around and try to help others learn how to navigate some of those experiences.
Appreciate that. Lieutenant Alice.
Yeah, I don't know if we were in the same fraternity, but I what you said really struck home, right? I played a lot of high school sports and then in college intramural, and it was, the aggressive type of sports, and then you have to dial that back when you get off the field, right? My father was not a hugger. He was thoughtful in many ways, but not like a compassionate type, and I'm a dad. I love to hug my kids, so sometimes we do exactly what we see, and sometimes we alter some things. And like Chris, it took me some time too to mature and gain some wisdom and kind of reassess how I was and then how I really want to be, so, and that takes time for sure.
If I could just follow up, Roger, you're totally right. And as I think back, especially in college, when you have 3 practices a day and you're just hearing over and over, you got to be physical, you got to be aggressive, you got to be physical, you got to be aggressive, which again, and some of those coaches are some of my lifelong friends and in hindsight, wonderful role models. But as a 18, 19, 20-year-old kid who's, still trying to figure themselves out, it's hard to separate that messaging from what happens when you take the helmet off. I was specifically talking there about, my years in football, and it's hard. It can be hard for that kid at 18, 19, 20, potentially, fueled on mind altering substances at 1:00 in the morning after the game. It can be challenging to separate the messaging that was directed in a positive way by the coach to help you be successful on the field with, how to conduct yourselves 12 hours later. And so that's one thing I love about the Coaching Boys and the Men is it's interwoven with, our athletic programming, so that the kids are hearing the same message from the same, in most cases, men who are, yes, I need you to be aggressive as the defensive end on this play for our team to be successful. But tonight, when you go home, or tomorrow, or whenever, this is what healthy behavior looks like. This is what healthy relationships look like. This is how you can be, an upstander for your friends or someone in a vulnerable position. That's why I think, to continue to leverage the power of those coaches, because frankly, in a lot of cases, those are the number one influence in the lives of our young men. Taking, positive advantage of that relationship, I think it continues to be a key resource that we need to leverage in our communities.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I could tell you when my father and I struggled interpersonally and weren't really jiving, so to speak. It was my soccer coach that I listened to, and not that my dad was sending the wrong messaging. I was that teenage kid that didn't want to hear from him. But I listened to my coach, and it's great that it's in the schools. As a father of 2 daughters, 4 kids, 2 are boys, 2 are girls, I would love it if every boy they dated went through the Coaching Boys and the Men curriculum, because the messaging is not just powerful, it's impactful. And I'm glad that you're making sure that it's being done in Westchester. And I look forward to a day it's in every school district, for sure.
Yeah, and also to be fair, Roger, while I completely share your opinion, for my children are girls and they're teenage girls, so I would love to know that all the boys that they're interacting with are on board with healthy relationships. I think one of the great things about athletics and education in general, we have so many teachers and coaches who do this work naturally without, the tools and resources that Coaching Boys into Men provides. I've been proud, just to have worked with so many of those folks over the years. But I do love the tool set that CBIM is providing as well. I think we need to continue that work.
I appreciate that, fellas. Before we jump into the next one, I just wanted to add my own little bit on what we just discussed. Having played ice hockey and rugby in high school, playing rugby and ice hockey in college, joining the military and ending up, as a mortarman, which is, within the infantry branch, your entire job is destroying the enemy, to put it kindly. So one aspect that I often struggled with was the need to feel like the biggest, baddest dude in the valley, so to speak, because I was trained on aggression. Like, I played rugby and ice hockey. Not all these teeth are real. I got into some scuffles. I got into all kinds of stuff. With the military, you train to fight, and fighting is, especially within the infantry, fighting is not only what you do, but your prowess, your abilities in fighting is what your worth is based off of. So it took a while for me to deprogram that from my brain, to go, you know what? You don't need to be the baddest dude in the valley. You can just be happy being you. And one of the best ways I got over that was educating myself, reading more, learning about other people in their walks of life, learning about other stories, having compassion for everyone else. And it sort of made me realize, like, I don't need to be that dude. Sure, I have all those skills, but that doesn't define me. What defines me is all the other fun stuff that I like to do, my personality, the fact that I'm one of the biggest goofballs I know. So that helped sort of put my brain in the right place, was realizing that those aren't what defines who I am. My ability to, fight and war and all that stuff with the military, that doesn't define me. My ability to tackle a guy or deliver a check in ice hockey doesn't define my personality. So that was my experience with it, because it all seems like we have pretty similar backgrounds with sports and this, that, and the other, and being told you got to be aggressive all the time. But so the next piece, why should teams participate in Coaching Boys into Men? For those just tuning in, for those who've never heard of Coaching Boys into Men, so it's an evidence-based curriculum. Evidence-based basically means we conduct surveys at the beginning and end of seasons to measure what the students know before we begin the program, and then we ask them the same set of questions at the end to see how much they've advanced in their understanding of what is an abusive relationship, and that goes beyond dating. Friendships are relationships, families are relationships. You can have abuse in any of those situations as well. So their ability to identify, to recognize and identify it, and then we also measure their ability or their willingness to intervene when they see abuse, because they can't intervene if they don't learn what it is. It's sort of a two points of the program to educate and come together into one. It's pretty simple. The coaches, I train the coaches. They deliver 15-minute training sessions once a week with their team on things ranging from respect and integrity, nonviolence, to consent, to, as we mentioned several times, electronic devices and electronic communications. That's sort of just the broad sweeping generalities of the program. Chris has had teams, working it for quite a while over at Bayard Rustin, and in total we've had 16 teams across the county do it. So I'm going to refer to him first, and he can tell you why he loves the program.
So Joe, full disclosure, like I was the athletic director for a long time, and you are constantly being asked to implement somebody's program. So I've seen a lot of different programs. Some of them are great. This is the first one I've seen that I feel like we should stick with. And all due respect to the other initiatives and programs out there, great people out there doing good work. To me, it's doable. Okay, that's the number one thing. As an AD, you're always looking out to make sure that your coaches can do their job and do it well. And so you're trying to limit other stuff, limit other administrative stuff. So the last thing I used to want to do was give them something else to worry about. This is it's doable. It's practical. It leverages the powerful voice that our coaches are for our young men. And probably I should have said this first, it's needed. Our young men, if left to their own devices, literally and figuratively, are lost. They're going to be lost. How could you not be? Take 5 minutes on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, or whatever. You're going to be lost if you're following that. And so they need a strong voice. They need a positive role model. Our coaches are the perfect people to do that, and it's doable. So to me, it's a no-brainer. I'm excited that we're doing it at Ruston and across the county. I know Lieutenant Ollis and folks at Coatesville, Phoenixville, Downingtown. I'm excited to see it continue to grow. Hopefully, as we enter post-pandemic life, we can get it back. Again, all due respect to the Zoomers out there, I think it needs to be an in-person, face-to-face program, if at all possible. Again, you all, Joe and Millie, have done an awesome job keeping it afloat through the pandemic. But to me, these conversations need to be in person. So I'm excited to kind of have a revitalization of it as we get into 21-22.
Well, I would also like to offer a big thanks to one of your coaches for helping us keep it afloat. Coach Larry Jackson, he is the JV basketball coach over at Baird Ruston. This year was his second year running the program. And his first time, well, anyone's first time running it through a global pandemic. He actually ended up receiving an award from us because he has done such a phenomenal job with it. So I just want to thank Rustin. I want to thank you. I want to thank Coach Larry because it was through Larry's efforts that kept the program running. We tried some digital adaptations, but he was willing to, get his feet into the fire to get it done. So I really want to thank you guys for that efforts. Looks like I keep accidentally muting myself. Let's ask Lieutenant Ollis, what you got for us, Roger?
Well, yeah, listening to Chris, wow, amazing response. What it made me think of was relevance. I mean, just think about how many individuals struggle in their relationships, and I do a lot of outreach. Some of it I feel like it's a result, not necessarily the answer. This program can be an answer for so many because it prevents. And it also acknowledges. I mean, people will sit through these trainings and they're like, oh, geez, maybe I should talk to my friend about how he talks to his girlfriend. Or maybe I should talk to my brother about how he speaks to mom. In my line of work, there are witnesses, right? And nothing's more frustrating than a witness that doesn't have a willingness to talk. And this program talks to that, the bystander, the observer, that then will have the intestinal fortitude because they know what they've seen and they know how to react to it. They'll have a conversation about it and try to right the wrong. I like that very much.
I do too. Huh. Well. Ooh. All right, so we got question here. We model healthy relationships and challenge. I feel like I need glasses or something. We model healthy relationships and challenge traditional concepts of gender roles at home, but we still see the impact unhealthy peer norms and ideas with our sons. How do we address these conflicting messages from friends? I got some ideas, but I'll give it to Chris first.
Amelia, welcome to life raising kids. Kids get the input for their own decisions from home, from school, from peers, and all of those are often included, digitally. It just has to be, the positive messaging from home just needs to be consistent, needs to be regular. And as a parent, you have to stay encouraged because often you don't see the results. You may not see the results until 5-10 years down the road. I think we've all probably hopefully said some things in gratitude to our parents that were 5 or 10 years overdue. And so as a parent, as a role model, as a coach, teacher, whatever your role is, it's important to have encouragement from, again, either a significant other, a spouse, a colleague, a coaching mate, because it can be discouraging when you're doing that work at home and you're not seeing the result. You're doing the work at home, you're still not seeing the result. But that doesn't mean the work that you're doing isn't having an impact. It is. It just may not be visible at the moment. That's true in a lot of aspects of life, and whether we're talking about academics or athletics or faith or anything else, we often don't see those results for a long time, sometimes a really long time. But it's important to stay encouraged by surrounding yourselves with other folks who share your belief system, because as the person who's trying to lead, if you become discouraged and give up, then the only messaging that child's getting is potentially the negative. And so I would just encourage you to, keep up the work, be encouraged by surrounding yourselves with those who can encourage you, be consistent and be regular. It is making a difference, even though you may not see it.
Yeah, peer pressure is strong, and there's such thing as positive peer pressure, and it's hard for us to pick our kids' friends, right? It was a whole lot easier for my parents because we didn't have these electronic devices, and you knew who called the house and where they were going and what you were doing. It's different nowadays, I get told that sometimes I, instead of telling the time, I build a clock, or I have lengthy life lessons. And I do believe dialogue is more impactful, but I'm not going to stop giving those life lessons and those speeches, or what's my daughter call it? I don't know. We'll just say a speech. I don't want to hear a speech. But I'm still going to give them, because as a dad, it's my job to tell them what they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear. And I often say that I'm your father, I'm not your friend. When you start having kids, I'll be more friendly, but I'm still going to be your dad. And my mother's in her 80s, and if I slip up, she is open and caring enough to provide the feedback that I need, even if I don't want to hear it, even at my age. Right?
Just a few of my thoughts on it real quick, because one thing that TikTok. I'm just going to say the words TikTok. So much of this peer culture and peer influence is sort of influenced and created by what they all see on social media. Every time I see her hang on my niece, we're talking about what's the latest trending song, dance, whatever TikTok, it is. And so I'm not sure 100% how to combat that, but so much in my experience from what I've seen, the youth culture is informed by what they're seeing on social media. For us, it was maybe TV. For the Xers and the millennials, it's what we saw on TV, what we heard in music. So much of what the Zoomers and whatnot they're being influenced by that. So keep that in mind. As a parent or as a mentor, that's where they're pulling a lot of their stuff, and the way we pulled from TV and music. And that as Alice said, you can't pick their friends for them. Wish you could. You can introduce them into places with positive sort of influences. Try and introduce them into sports. If you're a faith-based household, community, youth center. I know Christ Community Church, a lot of kids in the Westchester area went to on weekends and after school. So you can sort of introduce them into other potential positive influences. But one thing that I look back, and because you both had mentioned when you sort of realize that what your parents were doing and you appreciate what they did for you, I look back and I'm like, I always thought my dad was a jerk growing up. And then I just realized, no, he imparted a very positive influence on my life. And so even if I was hanging out with riffraff, I still knew when to stop and bail before we crossed a line that you don't come back from, because he imparted the correct morals in me. So you can't always tell your kids what to do, but I can tell you that if you put the right sort of morality and right guidance on them, they're going to be okay. You still want to keep an eye and make sure, they're doing the right things, but they're going to be okay, because I think we all went through it. We all went through the balancing act of, how much of a rebel do I want to be and how much do I want to do the right thing? And we sort of navigate this little way through, but it's repeatedly doing the right things and showing your kids to do the right things, and they're going to keep doing the right things.
Yeah, you police them long enough, they end up policing themselves. I mean, your father taught you consequence. And, there were times my father managed out of fear. I try not to do that. But you got to connect your kids to pro-social things that they don't have a willingness to lose. And with me, if my grades were poor, I didn't play soccer. It's really about creating or opening up opportunities for pro-social things for our kids to do. And they're less likely. In my line of work, it's a criminal justice lesson, but if you connect kids to pro-social things that they don't want to lose, they will act accordingly, and they'll be less likely to be a victim or an offender. I think it's really quite simple. Any of you theorists out there like reading theory, Travis Hershey's social bonds theory. It's not that difficult of a read. It's very interesting. A lot of theorists talk about why people commit crime. This one talks about why they don't. But remove the word crime and just put in social correctness or moral rectitude. There are reasons why people act accordingly, and there are reasons why they don't. And we want to limit the don'ts for our kids, and that's by setting them up to succeed in something positive.
Now, let me check real quick, because I think that's the end of the questions that we had pre-formatted. I didn't know if any more were popping up. Okay. Good old Eric. Many fathers coach their kids' sports team and serve as role models in that capacity. How can they start a dialogue with those young athletes about treating others with respect? Let's go same order.
Eric, thank you for your question. I think it's one of the great things about being a coach is you're provided with lots and lots of opportunities and teachable moments. You don't have to spend more than 5 minutes on a youth soccer, lacrosse, volleyball, name your sport tournament to see examples of unhealthy or negative behavior from adults and kids. Youth lacrosse tournament last weekend. I won't say where behind me. A couple dads got into a fist fight watching an 11-year-old lacrosse game. So as a coach, generally that doesn't happen. Thankfully, that's the first time I've seen that. But there are a lot of opportunities on the field or on the sidelines to speak to those teachable moments about respect, about healthy relationships, about how to respond to adversity, how to respond when someone doesn't treat you well, how to stand up for someone who's being mistreated. Those kinds of opportunities happen lots of times within an hour and a half practice or game. Now, certainly it's helpful if you have some tools in your bag to be able to respond to those things. If they're doing it for a few years, you kind of learn. You kind of learn what's going to happen and how to respond to it. But coaching even more so, just because you have 20 kids on the field competing versus the controlled environment of a classroom. On an athletic field or court, there's so much that's unscripted and that lays bare the true emotion of a person, the competition or being tested, that you see all aspects of the human condition. And so you have tons of opportunities to teach kids right there in the moment where it's the most real, as opposed to a classroom or even the CBIM. While it's great and it's real, it might be somewhat of a planned activity versus in the moment on a field in a practice in real time. You really you can really have an impact. Most of my most memorable teaching lessons came from just that, a moment in practice or a game where a coach or a teacher taught us something that is still with me today. So I think, Eric, there's no greater place if you want to have an impact than stepping up and coaching in your community.
Well, that was a drop the mic answer, wasn't it? I can tell you, I've coached my kids, and most of those teachable moments for me to learn, it was not easy. But what's different is you take your kids home, and the other kids are left to go to their other parents. So hopefully you've made a positive impression. But wow, fantastic answer, Chris. I'm just going to shut up after that. That was great.
I was going to say you nailed it there,
Chris,
especially the teachable moment thing sort of reflects back on what I said with, avoiding contrived answers and waiting for organic moments to pop up, because something like that, you see, they witness in the moment. It's not some hypothetical that they can brush off. They witness the same thing you did. So definitely the key, definitely. Let me double check, see if there's any more Facebook questions, comments, concerns. I think we're good. I don't see anything popping up. All right. With that being said, I appreciate both y'all for coming out. Thank you, Lieutenant Alice. Thank you, Dr. Lenardi. If anybody's viewing this and has any interest in the Coaching Boys and Men program, or just learning more in general, I'm going to ask, maybe scroll my contact info one more time at the bottom for a moment. Yeah, there it is. You can email me at jhenson@dvcccpa.org. Whether it's about the program or just looking for more information in general, and we can help you out. So again, I thank our panelists. I thank everyone that joined us, anyone that submitted a question, and anybody who watches this later in time who might not have been able to be here today. Thank you all very much. Enjoy your week. It was great seeing you guys.
Thank you, Joe.
Woo!